Hi, wanted to follow up with you. Today is Wednesday, and for those of you who have been looking at previous videos, this is my third day all alone. My lovely mate is out of the country, so I'm spending the month of October by myself. Kids are all grown and gone and living in different places. Spouse is out of the country, and so here I am. First things first, as of this morning, I put on 1.8 pounds since yesterday morning. Not a big deal. No particular reason. I think what I had yesterday was what I'd done let you know in the previous video. I think I'd had a big breakfast of eggs and cheese and link sausages and my coffee. And I'd had some pork rinds for a snack, I believe. And then really nothing else. No food for the rest of the day. And the thing about going up 1.8 pounds, it does not throw me for a loop. As you are well aware, we can carry things on board that weigh something that won't be there maybe in an hour or 2 hours. Not to get too graphic, but you know what I'm talking about. So weight fluctuations of a couple of pounds either direction, one shouldn't get too upset. This brings me to a comment that someone had made, one of my subscribers who had commented that she would only weigh once a week until she saw a couple of my videos, and she said she's going to weigh every day because she was realizing that, say she weighs once a week and there's no movement in the scale, or it bumps up a little bit, it's kind of discouraging and can lead to defeat and all this stuff. I mean, it kind of weighs on you, no pun intended. But then she might have missed out if during the week she'd actually lost weight. And that would have made her feel good. So you say, well, what's the difference? She ended up the same place. Well, no, every day really is different. For me, some people never weigh. They go by the way their clothes feel. They've gotten rid of their scale. Whatever is good for your mental health is the right thing to do. Another reason I weigh every day, I have referenced my ginormous spreadsheet that I've been using since December 18th, 2000. And it's gone through every incarnation of Excel that you can think of. And I have logged it, and I have logged more than just weight. I mean, it's a thing of beauty. Give me a spreadsheet with a bunch of formulas and I'm a happy person. But one reason I bring that up is because and I logged my weight. I've done so essentially every day for what is this, going on 16 years. Some years it was bad. I mean, it was discouraging. And I don't even know why I kept doing it. But since I started the ketogenic diet, it has not been discouraging, even when the weight will bump up. And, you know, I've lost 85.8 pounds to my lowest. And what I always do is, once I get to that lowest, that's how much I've lost, even if the next day I go up a little bit, because I'm counting the lowest weight I've lost. And in truth, and I'll talk about or write about this another time, I'm actually 103.5 pounds off of my heaviest from that day in December 2000. That's a whole other story. But because I have this giant spreadsheet, I've got columns which will compare today's weight, October 5th, 2016, against this day last year, this day the year before that, before that, before that, before that, before that, going back 16 years. So even if my weight went up today, I can find a positive. I'm 15.4 pounds lighter than I was this day last year. And when you are approaching 60 years old and you weigh less than you did last year, that's a good thing. It's actually like 30.7 pounds, I like numbers, less than this day 2 years ago, and 80.7 pounds less than this day in 2014? 13. So I find a positive. Another thing I do is I have a trend lines. You know, I have a chart with the weight. So it goes the last 2 weeks, looks at the last 2 weeks' weight and projects 2 weeks in the future. If my trend line is going in the right direction, I'm good. It's not always going in the right direction, but if it is. So if my weight's up and my trend line is the wrong direction, what I'm going to find to be happy about? I look at my average rolling 2-week weight. Looking back 2 weeks, what was my average weight? If that's lower, I'm good. If that's not good, then I start looking at my weekly weights and my monthly weights, because when I enter something today, it automatically carries over to weekly, into monthly, into annual. I've said that before. But even if all of those things are not what I want them to be, I decided about a year ago that there are certain things that are just out of my control. My weight, no matter if I'm just dead on perfect, weight, human body's an amazing thing and a frustrating thing sometimes. And sometimes things aren't just going your way. Who knows why? Atmospheric conditions, the phases of the moon, hormones. So I decided, what can I control? I can control how much activity I do. Now, I don't formally exercise. I have done in the past, again, another story, but I don't formally exercise. I do get my steps in. I have this Garmin, which is under my sleeve right now. It's a Garmin 920. And it tells me how many steps to get today based on my previous X number of days. It extrapolates it out. So if I don't make my steps, then tomorrow my steps requirement will be lower. If I get my steps in today, tomorrow it'll bump it up a little bit. So I just said, you know what? I'm going to get my steps in. If nothing else, I'm going to get my steps in 23 out of 30 rolling days. So I made a chart for that. Well, I'm happy to say that I've been getting my steps in every day for, I think it's a month and a half, 45 days in a row, which also means that my steps get higher every day, which makes it a little bit more of a challenge every day, but that's a good thing. That I can control to some degree. Even if the weather's cruddy and I can't get outside and walk, I literally run around my house looking like a maniac, like a crazy person. My dogs are now used to it. I walk a path quickly through my downstairs, and sometimes to shake it up, I go upstairs. And I'll get those daggum steps in. That I can control. If I'm waiting for the water to boil, get some steps in. If I'm waiting for a program on my computer to update, or I'm trying to get some steps in. So I try to find something to celebrate every day as far as this goes. And that works for me. Okay, so much for that. Today, bouillon. I have not really had anything to eat today. I got up, had some coffee, went to the office, had a meeting, came back home, put on my comfy clothes. Not really hungry. But it's cloudy and overcast here. I am in North Carolina, not on the coast. Keep a good thought for everybody in Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina with Hurricane Matthew. It does not look like it's going to be pretty. It is overcast here and kind of creepy. So I had some bouillon just because I felt like it. And this is a really good thing to take if you're feeling a little peckish but don't really want to eat, and maybe you want to make sure your electrolytes are in balance. And I use the Knorr bouillon cubes. This one's beef. I always get chicken. Okay, enough of that. And to let you know, my experiment, I'm not sure that I'm doing anything differently now than I would if my husband was here and he was coming home for lunch and dinner every day. We'll have to see as I get a little bit more into this and I do become a little bit more lonely and bored and lots more time on my hands and the days become shorter, what's going to happen. I'm curious. I'm curious to see whether I care enough about getting some food to actually go to the grocery store, which I hate doing. I might just boil up some more eggs. So I'll keep you posted on that. Last night, I went to the Low Carb Support Group meeting in Durham. I live about an hour away from where it's held. Dr. Eric Westman is extremely generous with his time. For future reference, it is usually held on Periscope. So you follow Eric Westman on Twitter, Dr. Eric Westman on Twitter, and then you get the Periscope. So he usually has that broadcast through Periscope. So the next meeting will be November 1st. It's always the first Tuesday of the month. So I went. I had asked for some questions to ask Dr. Westman, and several people responded. So I want to address those. Kelly asked, are there special guidelines or whatever for women who are premenopausal, so mid to late 40s? He replied that no, not really, not that he has seen. He's all about research and being able to document. He said, no, not really. there is some pretty strong evidence that postmenopausal women, hello, do need to be more strict than other people. Lucky us, right? I can attest to that. I am very strict. Many people don't need to be as strict as I am in regards to carbohydrate restriction. I usually stay around 10 grams a day, sometimes less. I will go days without eating a vegetable, and it suits me. But some people can certainly do more than that. So this is why I think testing for ketones, tracking your weight, how do you feel, measure your inches, and all this. It depends what your ultimate goal is, but good health is what you want, of course. So as long as all the health markers you want are in line, if you're feeling comfortable with your weight, just listen to your body. But do try to track things like blood glucose, and if you can afford to do it, blood ketones. The strips are a little pricey, but I highly recommend it. Another question was, are there any doctors in the Spartanburg, Greenville, South Carolina area that follow Dr. Westman's protocol? He replied that he did not know of any personally, but that Jimmy Moore is actually from that area. That's just a coincidence. Jimmy Moore has on his website doctors. You can look and see doctors across the country that he has compiled a list of that might be amenable to the low carb approach. Third question came from Heather, who actually, in my opinion, probably knows more than I do about this, and sounds like more than a lot of doctors, but she wanted to know about very low carb consumption for treating type 1 diabetes in children. And I had replied that I would ask Dr. Westman, but I was sure he would reference Dr. Bernstein's book. Dr. Bernstein is a type 1 diabetic himself and is a scrupulous research and tracks everything. He keeps his blood sugar at 83 blood glucose. And a lecture by R.D. Dykman that from a San Diego low carb that was just in August. I happened to have been at it. Dr. Westman was at that conference and attended the lectures and spoke at it. And sure enough, that was his recommendation. But Heather already knew about these references. There is sorry about that, I had a technical issue. I ran out of battery. To continue, R.D. Dykman was at the Low Carb USA conference in San Diego. It was actually in July, not August. And he gave a really wonderful lecture. His son is a type 1 diabetic, and he really ran up against opposition to trying to manage this condition with the low carb way. If you get a chance to see the lecture, you can go to dietdoctor.com. I believe it's behind the paywall. You have to pay $9 a month or something like this. I pay it. I think it's money worth spending because there's some great resources, many lectures, interviews, things that you don't get on the free side. There's a lot of great information on the free side as well. But you can even do a 30-day trial for free and get to see a bunch of movies and lectures. Anyway, if you get a chance to see this lecture and several of the other ones that were at San Diego, as well as other conferences and the low carb cruises, I really think it makes sense to do. Anyway, so ultimately the question, Heather had the resources she needed for that, but I think the question for her was, how do I deal with a doctor who won't listen to this, just as, So I asked Dr. Westman about that in the group and at the support group meeting. It's a common thing. He says you just have to educate them. You just have to keep educating them. It's a little scary that we have to educate our medical doctors on something. Personally, I don't understand why physicians can become so dug in when it comes to food. They're not necessarily dug in and resist new procedures or new devices or new medications, but for some reason food gets under their skin. Some of them. So those were those questions. The meeting, as I said, is held every month, first Tuesday of every month. So do try to, if you're in the area, try to attend it. If you're not, try to see it on Periscope, the Periscope app. Or if you know people who are going to be there, like me or other people, there are a lot of people that attend, send a question along and we can try to ask them. There's a lot of information to be learned. I am far from knowing everything. I am still learning myself, but I do enjoy the research. So ask away if you feel like there's something that I can share that might help, and continue to share your ideas with me. They help me. And thank you for the positive feedback I've gotten. It's been very rewarding. You make these videos or write blog posts, and you send it up into the ether, and you never know whether it's landing or whether you look a fool or whether it helps anyone. So thanks for the positive feedback. Do keep a good thought for the folks who might be impacted by the hurricane, and make it a great day. Keep your carbs under 20, moderate protein, eat only when hungry. TTFN.